back to Talking Tunes.
Welcome to Talking Tunes. I'm Oscar Osbo. It's time to take a trip back to a wonderful interview that was done by John Russell and Rick Hickman. And it's Dewey Bunnell, who is a member of America.
John Russell and Rick Hickman with you, and it's always exciting when we have a chance to talk about one of the all-time great bands in American and international music history. In 1970, a trio of musical talents, Dewey Bunnell, Jerry Beckley, and Dan Peek, joined forces to create music that turned into not only a string of top hits, but tunes that would live on perpetually as absolute standards. Wherever you venture, where classic hits are being aired, you'll hear music by America, and it is our pleasure and honor to be joined by one of the originators of this hit machine as we welcome into the Legend Spotlight, Mr. Dewey Bunnell.
Hey, hi, Jon and Rick. That's very nice. What a build-up.
Dewey singing groups have been formed in a variety of ways. Sometimes it's just a group of neighborhood kids that play instruments. Sometimes auditions are held. But Jerry Beckley, Dan Peek, and you had similar backgrounds that were far different than most. Can you explain those background similarities and how your friendships began?
Sure. We met in the mid-'60s in London, England, because our fathers were in the Air Force, so we were stationed there at a base. And actually, between the three of us, we'd been in some other international places. Dan had his father was stationed in Pakistan at one point, and Jerry's was in Germany. But I have a British mother, or had, rest in peace, and Jerry's mom is English too, so we had some British connections that way. And in fact, I was born in England. But we met in high school, so it was an American high school there, and it was the mid-'60s, and we all had that common interest in music, and we played guitar, so we became close friends and had a high school band playing top 40 stuff, and graduated in 1969, and everybody kind of went their own way for a few months. Dan went to college back in Virginia for a semester, but we all kind of gravitated back to Jerry and I were still in England, working at the base and so on, and lo and behold, we've been writing songs, original material, which is really the key to any kind of original band. So we put our heads together. Dan came back, and we really went after it seriously, and we were very fortunate. We made the right contacts in London at the time, and within the course of less than a year, we had something going. We were playing shows, opening for Elton John and Pink Floyd and The Who, and these three American. We were still literally teenagers. I think 18, 19, 20 was our respective ages. And we got a record deal with Warner Brothers and recorded the first album, and Horse with No Name was a big hit, and here we are 43 years later.
And, of course, A Horse with No Name really made things take off. We'll get to that in a moment. But how was the band name selected?
We'd become kind of known in that short amount of time around the music scene in London as the American teenagers, the American band. And Chicago had been out in 68. I think they came out 68, 67. And so we thought, ooh, Chicago, that's a city. And it just all fell into place. As legend has it, when we were in the cafeteria, the base cafeteria, we'd hang out there and play music on the jukebox, and it was called an Americana. And we've always sort of touted that as another inspiration for the name, but just kind of went with the times, and we were expats, if you will, American kids over there, so it all tied together.
You mentioned Horse with No Name. It actually had, when you penned it, a different title. I believe it was called the Desert Song. Kind of give us the genesis of that, and maybe, that thing just blowing up like it did, and your reaction to all of a sudden you guys are international stars.
Yeah, it was quite a shock, frankly. Well, the song was inspired by its literal narrative. It's a desert. I had, in the Air Force, we'd moved to various places around the country, the U.S., lived at different bases, and I always enjoyed the desert. We'd spent some time in the Southwest, and needless to say, it was certainly not a desert in England. It's rainy. It's got that reputation for having kind of gloomy weather. And so I was inspired to write a song about the sights and sounds of the desert, and the heat was hot, and so on. So it just kind of fell out. It was a simple enough song, and it still is.
On the first part of the journey, I was looking at all the life. There were plants and birds and rocks and things. There were sand and hills and rain. horse with no name. It felt good to be out of the rain. In the desert, you can't remember your name, 'cause there ain't no one for to give you no pain. After 9 days, I let the horse run free, 'cause the desert had turned to sea. There were plants and birds and rocks and things. There was sand and hills and rings. The ocean is a desert with its life underground and the perfect disguise above. Under the cities lies a heart made of brown, but the humans will give no love. You see, I've been through the desert on a horse with no name. It felt good to be out of the rain. In the desert, you can't remember your name, 'cause there ain't no one for to give you no pain. La, 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 la,
We never expected it to be a single. We'd already written and recorded most of the first album at that point, and Warner Brothers said, "Have you got any other stuff?" And of course, we were still writing, and that was one of the tunes. Recorded it, and they decided that that would be the single. We had our focus on the song "I Need You" as the initial single, and subsequently it was the second single. It did quite well too, another top 10 record, but. Yeah, we just didn't. It just didn't seem like a likely radio hit at the time. But there were comparisons to Neil Young, and Neil Young was on the up and up at the time, and late of Buffalo Springfield, and of course Crosby, Stills and Nash had formed, and Neil Young had joined them for the second album. So, it's like timing is everything, I guess. And we were off and running, and it was a big hit, and we went on to win the Grammy for Best New Artist of 1972 based on that.
And Dewey, I know that you had released A Horse with No Name in England first, and as things always did back then, took quite a few months to actually hit our shores here. And I'm curious when the band America actually returned to America.
Several months after that, we came over and did our first club tour. We did 6 weeks, ending at the Whiskey A Go Go out in L.A., and by then we opened on the East Coast, opening for the Everly Brothers, and by the time the tour was over out at the Whiskey, it was number one in the States. So it was really a Cinderella story for us, and quite a magical time.
No doubt one of the reasons of success of Horse with No Name was the fact that it just sounded different than a lot of pop hits or hard rock hits that were popular at the time. Such a different sound that it really captured the imagination. So much so that a lot of times the lyrics, people had a tendency to want to read a lot of things into it. As you said, simply enough pen to be a song about the desert, but not in that time where poetry was really a part of rock lyrics and people wanting to read perhaps more into it than you had ever intended.
Yeah, I think we've all done that with songs, Bob Dylan lyrics or whatever. I mean, it's you have this sort of 3 minutes to say something or to create a picture, a word picture, or describe a narrative, and so there's a lot of breathing room in there for interpretation. And there was some people, it was actually banned at a few radio stations for alleged drug references, but it'd be hard-pressed to show me where that is, but
Sure.
It just happens that way, that everybody does have, they think there's secret messages and stuff. I remember the Beatles songs. There was always something going on in their tunes, too, and is Paul dead? And you play things backwards and hear different messages. But I can tell you, having written the song, that it was purely my love of the desert and the sights and sounds thereof
Right out of the box, you have the success of that, as you mentioned. I think Jerry penned some songs. I mean, you were a really self-contained group in that you're all songwriters, obviously musicians and things like that. Was there any thought to, man, we've created this killer album. Holy cow, are we going to have the sophomore jinx with album number 2? Have we created this monster, or didn't even think about that type of stuff?
Well, we were really just pouring out songs at the time. We were writing a lot, and so there was already half of the second album done by the time, or at least written, if not more, by the time that first one came out. So we did have a lot of stuff going. We recorded Ventura Highway and some stuff from the second album actually still in England. We had demos of them at least. Then when we relocated back to the U.S., to L.A. to be next to the Warner Brothers was our label, like I said, and we had new management out there. David Geffen and Elliot Roberts had a management firm at the time. Of course, David Geffen has gone on to become much more powerful in the entertainment industry, but at the time he had Lookout Management. It was a great roster of artists that we came up with. The Eagles, they were in there. Of course, CSN were in there, Joni Mitchell and John David Souther, Jackson Brown, Linda Ronstadt. It was an incredible office, actually,
wow,
for us. And we were the young upstarts to step into. And our first major tour of the U.S. was with J.D. Souther opening, and the second one that year was with Jackson Brown opening the show. And we had wonderful tours, and the shows were big, much bigger than we were prepared for, frankly. We were, after all, just kind of an acoustic harmony band sitting on stools. We had to expand the lineup to include a rhythm section. We didn't even have drums and bass guitar at the time. Our little trio show would have Dan and Jerry sometimes playing bass. There was a bass on stage, but primarily it was 3 acoustic guitars, a 12-string and 2 6-strings, and our voices. So everything had to be ratcheted up to make this a full arena-type show,
Chewing on a piece of grass, walking down the road. Tell me, how long you gonna stay here, Joe? Some people say this town don't look good in snow. You don't care, I know. Ventura Highway in the sunshine, where the days are longer, the nights are stronger than moonshine. You're gonna go, I know. Cause a free wind is blowing through your hair, and the days surround your daylight there. Seasons crying, no despair. Alligator lizards in the air, in the air. Wishing on a falling star, waiting for the early train. Sorry, boy, but I wouldn't get by purple rain. Oh, come on, Joe, you can always change your name. Thanks a lot, son, just the same. Ventura Highway in the sunshine, where the days are longer, the nights are stronger than moonshine. You're gonna go, I know. Cause the free wind is blowing through your hair, and the days surround your daylight there. Seasons crying, no despair. Alligator lizards in the air, in the air.
Dewey, if you can hang in with us for a little while longer. We're just really starting our chat with Dewey Bunnell of America. And, of course, I know you're anxious to hear a whole lot more of their most famous hits right here.
Talking Tunes.
Muskegon's 100.9? Come on, let's listen in on a high-level meeting with the Talkin' Tunes team.
Okay, we need ideas for our next promo to promote Talkin' Tunes. Anybody? Come on, it's great talk and interviews and awesome music. Saturday mornings from 10 to noon. I mean, anybody got an idea? Nothing. You gotta be kidding. We're not leaving here until you guys come up with some kind of idea. I mean, we can...
Don't worry, they'll come up with something. Eventually. Maybe. Talkin' Tunes, Saturday mornings from 10 to noon on Muskegon's 100.9.
It's amazing because really you guys were youngsters. You were really kids, but with a very mature sound. But as you started to get your first glimpses of fame, how did you handle that individually?
I think we handled parts of it really well, and other parts you're just swept away, and there's not much controlling it. I mean, there is a lot of the money part, of course, always changes everything. You have no money, it changes things. You have a lot of money, it changes things. So that part, you have to point it out. We did buy houses ultimately, things we never thought we'd have, cars, the things. But I think we handled the road and our own direction with regard to the songwriting and our approach to arrangements and production. I mean, we were inspired by the great songwriters of our era, and that's what we aspired to. Brian Wilson, Beach Boys music, Beatles music. We wanted to keep that focus primary, and I think we managed that to the degree that we didn't go off on a tangent too far. And the travel aspect of this life can be really destructive if you're not used to it. And we had been traveling as kids from base to base and so on. I think I went to about 8 different schools during the course of my education, my primary school and high school. And so that transient aspect of the music of a band, we were prepared for that. We'd experienced it. And it can be unsettling. You're uprooted constantly. You're living out of a suitcase. But I think, by and large, that's why we're still here, is that we handled it as good as can be expected at the time.
We used to laugh. We used to cry. We used to bow our heads there, wonder why. Now you're gone. I guess I'll carry on. Make the best of what you've left to me. Left to me. Left to me. I need you like the flower needs the rain. You know I need you. Guess I'll start it all again, you know I need you. Like the winter needs the spring, you know I need you. I need you. Every day I'd laugh the hours away, just knowing you were thinking of me. Then it came that I was put to blame for every story told about me. About me, about me. I need you like the flower needs the rain, you know I need you. Yes, I'll start it all again, you know I need you. I need you. I need you. Like the winter needs the spring, you know I need you.
And the three of you were really smart enough to bring in some awfully good professional help, too, weren't you?
George Martin, speaking of the Beatles, everybody was so inspired by. We were very fortunate to be able to bring George Martin on board for 7 albums total. He produced us, starting with the 4th album, and that lifted our game, and I think that stabled things a little. George really took control of that aspect, because at the time we were producing ourselves primarily. We did have a co-producer on the first album, but the second and third albums we produced. So by the 4th album, we realized this is a bigger job than just writing some songs.
Really nice of the three of you to bring in a rookie producer like a George Martin and give the
give him
youngster
a
a leg into the industry.
Well, we thought that guy might go somewhere. So George is he's a wonderful man, and we were so fortunate. We always tout those George Martin years as the most special, because also George made the recording process a lot of fun, because he liked to go to different studios, and so a lot of different location recording. We actually barged equipment out to the island of Kauai in Hawaii for one album. We worked at his studio down in Montserrat in the Caribbean. We worked in Colorado at the Caribou Ranch. We worked in London, and we worked all over L.A., San Francisco. So each project is like a little postcard in our lives. Good old George.
I know, and I'll tell you what, I had heard George talk about, after the Beatles and all that, he had an opportunity really to kind of, I don't know if George ever relaxes, but he had a chance to actually do things that he wanted to do, and I'm sure you guys came along in that era, so he had already obviously made his name for himself with the Beatles, but he would get involved. I mean, he was really a hands-on guy, and I mean that in a good way. I mean, he would get on, he'd play instruments on the Beatles stuff and even on your stuff, right?
Yes, he did, yeah. He's the piano on Tin Man, that's George. But there's all kinds of other little bits. He would roll his sleeves up and get down there and work out arrangements.
Sometimes late when things are real and people share the gift of gab between themselves. Some are quick to take the bait and catch the perfect prize that waits among the shelves. But Oz never did give nothing to the Tin Man that he didn't already have. And cause never was the reason for the evening or the Tropic of Sir Galahad. So please believe in me when I say I'm spinning round, 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 round. Smoke, glass, stain, bright color, image going down, 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 down. Soap, sud, green, light bulb. Oh, I never did give nothing to the Tin Man that he didn't already have. And cause never was the reason for the evening or the Tropic of Sir Galahad. So please believe in me when I say I'm spinning round, 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 round. Smoke, glass, stain, bright color, image going down, 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 down. So sud, green, light bulb. No, I never did give nothing to the Tin Man that he didn't already have. And cause never was the reason for the evening or the Tropic of Sir Galahad. So please believe in me. Ooh.
course, with George, you got an arranger. You got a symphony arranger with George. So we got involved in some string arrangements, and that was added another element to those recordings. And he was just an all-around good guy. We always looked up to him, of course. So we were the young guys, and he was experienced. I mean, he really knew what was going on in there. And of course, with George, we got Jeff Emmerich engineering, and Jeff Emmerich had engineered the Beatles stuff from Paperback Writer on. So he had been on that vanguard of studio innovation along with George Martin. By then, of course, we started to move towards the digital age. I think we used one of the first digital boards and things. It got beyond me. I'm kind of 6 strings and a piece of paper and a pencil. I'm not much of a tech head that way, but tried to keep up.
And, of course, you've been keeping up for a lot of years, giving us a lot of great hits, and we've really just scratched the surface.
You know, you mentioned Dan, of course. He leaves the group in 77 to change directions. He actually becomes one of the members, really kind of the forefront of this Christian pop music, and does a good job with that. You know, the thing that I hear kind of behind the lines, too, is, you know, so often a group breaks up and you hear the animosity and, no, I never want to see you again or anything like that. I didn't get the sense that was the case with you guys.
With Dan, you know, we were talking earlier about the stress and the pressure of those early years, and I think it really brought out his Christian upbringing and his desire to, you know, it was a natural fork in the road. We kind of went one way, and Dan was really pulled the other way, and he had strong family ties in Farmington, Missouri, and came from a quite a spiritual family, things that we didn't actually know at the time. That's the thing about Air Force families and kids. You're all from different walks of life and different backgrounds. You just come together on bases or in schools and things. So he had a side of his life that we were not aware of as high schoolers, and so that was important to him. And he did go off and begin making some Christian music. All his albums were you know, driven by that.
When you turn misty blue, I have my eyes on you. The good things will come true. Just believe in your heart. There's nothing too much for you. With me there to help you through. All things are possible with you by my side. All things are possible with you to be my guide.
Of course, we wished him well at the time and still do. Sadly, he's passed away. It'll be 2 years this summer. That was a shock because he was only 60. But he had a great life and made some wonderful music. And obviously his mark on our music speaks for itself. He wrote some of our bigger hits, Lonely People, Don't Cross the River. And we still play those songs in our set today.
This is for all the lonely people, thinking that life has passed them by. Don't give up until you drink from the silver cup and ride that highway in the sky. This is for all the single people, thinking that love has left them dry. Don't give up until you drink from the silver cup. You never know until you try. Well, I'm on my way. Yes, I'm back to stay. Well, I'm on my way back home. Get it? never take you down or never give you up. Never know until you try.
You know, I know one thing, we're classic hits here, and we always say, Rick and I, that the greatest music that was ever made is the era that we celebrate now, from the late 50s right on through the early 80s, and certainly you are a mainstream of that. But I think it was something that Jimmy Webb said, and you touched on it earlier when you were talking about, working at the same place with all these great groups, the Jackson Browns and folks like that. It was a competition. It was almost like, hey, these guys did this. Let's see what we could do a little bit better. And it was really, you guys all wanted to improve. It was I guess it was kind of like, it was certainly a rivalry. You guys were all in one sense competing with one another, but there was also kind of a sense of camaraderie, wasn't there?
There really was. It felt like a community of sorts, and we would hang on every note, waiting to hear, the Eagles' new album is going to be out next month, and it was a different experience, I think, than today. And of course, I'm going to date myself, but the vinyl era, you really waited for that platter to play, that LP, and you sit around in the living room and pick apart songs and listen to these innovations and stuff. And so, yeah, each band, I think, and each artist was always taking a little from the other and putting something more on it, and beginning really with those 60s bands that Brian Wilson was always in some competition, allegedly, and Brian's a dear friend of ours, and we work with them all the time, but he was always driven to one-up the Beatles. It's legendary. And I think those kind of precedents were set, that you wanted to keep raising the bar, or if you could. I don't know that we ever succeeded at that, to be perfectly honest. I think I've always kind of looked at us at one of the bands that were like we're bricks and we're the mortar holding some of those other more innovative bands together. But we always just wanted to reflect our generation and that era and keep up with that direction, So the vocal harmonies and the lyrics, and the melodies were primary, the song crafting.
Right.
I don't know that it was ever super competitive per se, because we all did. Once you've established your particular style, if you will, everybody's voice is different. They're like fingerprints, so you don't change that much. There's nothing new about acoustic guitars and vocal harmonies, but there are endless nuances that you can apply to song building, So we really enjoyed each other and seeing each other, and still do. We cross paths with most of the bands that are still working now, and work with them. We worked with Blood, Sweat, and Tears 2 nights ago, and we've got shows with the Doobie Brothers and bands that we've worked with, Chicago, working with all those guys, still at it.
Flying me back to Memphis, gotta find my Daisy Jane. Well, the summer's gone, and I hope she's feeling the same. Well, I left her just to roam the city, thinking it would ease the pain. I'm a crazy man, and I'm playing my crazy game. Does she really love me? I think she does. Like the stars above me, I know, because when the sky is bright, everything's alright. Flying me back to Memphis, honey, keep the oven warm. Well, the clouds are clearing, and I think we're over the storm. But I've been picking it up around me. Daisy, I think I'm safe. Well, I'm awful glad, and I guess you're really to blame. everything's alright. Does she really love me? I think she does. Like the stars above me, I know because the sky is bright, everything's alright.
You've always really thought out of the box and have worked, as you said, with not only your contemporaries, but also, like the Smashing Pumpkins and some of the newer groups that were coming up. I mean, you kind of helped the young guys along a little bit, didn't you?
Yeah, when you turn around and look, you're, instead of being the wet behind the ears rookies in the office, you're suddenly these seasoned veterans, if you will. I still never wear that hat very well. But yeah, a few years back, we had gotten involved with the band Fountains of Wayne's music. We loved it. Jerry and I thought, man, these guys really can put together songs. And back to what we were talking about, song crafting. And Jerry started up a email relationship with Adam Schlesinger, one of the primary writers and producers in Fountains of Wayne, and that led to him saying, we have a studio here in New York. My partner, James Ehoff from Smashing Pumpkins, and I, we have a production company, and you guys ought to consider. So that was a new direction for us, and it was premeditated in the sense that we did need to breathe some kind of new life into things. We'd gotten into a pattern that was a little stale, and so it was great to write with them and go into the studio, and Adam and James produced us, and along with them came Ryan Adams came in. I wrote a song with Ryan right off the cuff, right out of whole cloth. He came in one day, all right, what do you got, some titles? Let's see what you got. And we wrote a song, and that was on the album.
Is there a certain amount of liberation, Dewey, with the fact that, you had the success that you had to build your career, and then, like we said, you can still continue and experiment with music a little bit, maybe go off on different directions, and it isn't, it isn't so much like, at least you got the other hits, and when you're doing the shows, you can come back to that.
I'm not as driven as I was. I'm 61 now, and my life is, I'm very happy. I've been very, actually pleasantly surprised with this career, that as long as it's been here. Not driven the same way I was, we were talking earlier, where we were already writing the songs for the second album before the first album had even hit the street. But it is nice to find those moments. They're fewer and farther between when you're inspired either by someone's new work, a young band, something like that. There's always something in the works.
There's a little girl out lying on her own. She's got a broken heart. She's not the kind to take you down for long. She knows and plays it smart. And if she's coming, she showed no more. She's heard no whistle blowing from the dark. She feels like leaving and she don't know why. Without no bridges she's trapped, so I sigh. Don't cross the river if you can't swim the tide. Don't try denying living on the other side all your life. You were on your own. If you want, you can ride my train and soon forget the reason that you're leaving. Lose yourself and then sometime maybe even save yourself some grieving. Don't cross the river if you can't swim the tide. Don't try denying living on the other side. Don't cross the river if you can't swim the tide. Don't try denying living on the other side. Don't cross the river if you can't swim the tide. Don't cross the river if you can't.
The geography's changed. It's a different business now, and with streaming and downloads and the whole digital world has changed. It hasn't changed. what we're talking about, the creative process, quite so much. But it's changed the way all music is listened to, and you don't sit around the turntable anymore, and you have instant access. So it's almost overwhelming, frankly. I can't. I get a little ADD about it. Trying to listen to new artists and see what direction things are going in. But I'm very happy with our position right now, and we're working. We still do 85 to 100 shows a year, and we do. Jerry's got his home studio. He actually puts out solo albums and things. I've never been that driven. I'm kind of maybe lazy somewhat. But there's a lot of life to live other than just this business. You know?
Right.
And especially in the summertime, it's fishing time.
You've heard a ton of their amazing hits today, and we didn't even get to play them all, Jon. Dewey, we've had a great time having you join us in the Legend Spotlight.
My pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity, guys.
Thanks, Dewey. Take
See
care.
you in our neighborhood. Bye-bye.
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 Well, I tried to make it Sunday, but I got so damn depressed that I set my sights on Monday, and I got myself undressed. I ain't ready for the altar, but I do agree there's times when a woman sure can be a friend of mine. Well, I keep on thinking about you, Sister Golden Hair Surprise, and I just can't live without you. Can't you see it in my eyes? I've been one poor correspondent, and I've been too hard to find, but it doesn't mean you ain't been on my mind. Will you meet me in the middle? Will you meet me in the air? Will you love me just a little, just enough to show you care? Well, I try to fake it, I don't mind saying I just can't make it. Well, I keep on thinking about you, Sister Golden Hair Surprise, and I just can't live without you. Can't you see it in my eyes? Now I've been one poor correspondent, and I've been too hard to find, but it doesn't mean you ain't been on the mind. Will you meet me in the middle? Will you meet me in the air? Will you love me just a little, just enough to show you care? Well, I try to fake it, I don't mind saying I just can't make it.
TAL because we like you. KTU, you are special. NES, S is for see you next week.